Every documentary begins with access. Someone agrees to let you into their home, their workplace, their family, sometimes into the most painful moments of their lives. But access is only the beginning. The real work is earning trust, maintaining it, and understanding the responsibility that comes with holding another person's story. In this episode of The Documentary Life, I sit down with filmmakers Alan Barry and Mark Enochs to explore what ethical documentary filmmaking actually looks like in practice. We'll explore access, consent, trust, and the responsibilities filmmakers carry long after the cameras stop rolling. Rather than offering easy answers, this episode examines the human relationships at the heart of every documentary. It was nearly 6 months to the day after the Haiti earthquake in 2010, when somewhere between 250 and 300,000 people perished. The Haitians called it gudu gudu, an onomatopoeia that mimicked the loud rumbling sound of the earth shaking and buildings collapsing. What I saw when I stepped off the plane was shocking, even to my eyes, which had already seen devastation and poverty in places like Cambodia, Nepal, Indonesia. Buildings for miles had been leveled. Roads surrounding the airport were still so thick with rubble that many were impassable. Haiti hadn't had much in the way of infrastructure before Gudu Gudu, let alone afterwards. I remember wondering, how do you remove the rubble when you can't even get to the rubble? I had been hired by Relief International to produce a series of short documentaries highlighting the work they'd been doing on the ground. Unlike many of the thousands of NGOs that had arrived after the earthquake, Relief International had been working in Haiti for years. They already knew the communities. The trust was already there. I was essentially a one-person crew. I was shooting, monitoring audio, directing interviews, doing everything. It's an image many of you probably know, the one-person documentary filmmaker. Responsible for every aspect of the shoot. I know it's not for everybody, but I've always kind of loved this way of filmmaking. The wizardry of trying to think about story, camera, sound, light, and another human being all at the same time. About 4 days into the trip, we spent the morning in one of the tent camps outside Port-au-Prince. That morning we were scheduled to interview a young mother. Previously a mother of 3, previously a wife. When we first arrived, she looked surprised to see us, almost as though she wasn't expecting company. Our local contact gently reminded her that she had agreed to speak with us a few days earlier. She looked at me suspiciously, protectively. She was holding her baby close. Standing there with my camera, tripod, audio kit, I suddenly felt enormous. Like I'd brought far too much equipment into a space that didn't belong to me. So I immediately put the camera down, and I tried to make myself smaller. Inside the tent there wasn't much. A cot, a camp stove, some baby clothes, a few bottles of water neatly stacked in the corner. As I clipped the lavalier microphone onto her shirt, I noticed she was trembling ever so slightly. She gently rocked the baby in her arms. I tried to work quickly, gave her a light pat on the shoulder, and tried to catch her eye for just a moment. She smiled back weakly. The tent was tiny, so I quietly moved into the corner, framed the shot, and pressed record, and nodded to my partner that we were rolling. The woman began telling us about the day of the earthquake. At first she spoke quickly, nervously. As the interview continued, she slowly relaxed. At one point, she even began breastfeeding her baby while continuing to answer questions. Then about 15 minutes into the interview, she stopped. Now remember, I didn't understand the conversation as it was happening. Everything was being translated for us. But something about the silence made me glance away from the viewfinder. Then I heard a sniffle in my headphones. The tent suddenly felt unbearably hot, too small, too crowded. She tried to continue speaking, but the words wouldn't seem to come. Our translator quietly informed us she's talking about her husband and her 5-year-old daughter being found in the rubble. My partner immediately said, "It's okay, we don't have to film this." The translator asked her if she'd like to stop, and she shook her head no. She wants to keep going. I looked up again to see her wipe the tears from her eyes, then from her nose. So many emotions rushed through me all at once. I wanted nothing more than to stop recording, to hand her a tissue, to put my hand on her shoulder, to offer some kind of small comfort. But I didn't move. Instead, I made a conscious decision to honor the moment as best I could. This woman had insisted on telling her story. If she had the strength to continue, then I needed to do everything in my power to film her as honestly and respectfully as I knew how. As she continued speaking, I very slowly tightened the frame. Not dramatically, not for effect, just a little closer, a little more intimate, mindfully, respectfully. She still had to stop every so often to gather herself, but she finished telling her story. And then the interview was over. She smiled. She talked quietly with our translator for a few minutes. They embraced. Then she reached over, picked up a bottle of water, and she offered it to us. One of the greatest privileges in documentary filmmaking isn't being given access. It's being entrusted with someone's story. Welcome back to The Documentary Life. This is a show about how to live and lead your own documentary life. I'm your host, Chris G. Parkhurst, and this is episode number 144, The Ethics Lab, Access, Consent, and Trust. Alan Barry and Mark Enochs are Indianapolis filmmakers who spent the last 4 years putting together the true crime documentary Dead Man's Line, a film that details a rather important piece of Indianapolis history. A Hollywood adaptation of this story, Dead Man's Wire, has just recently been released. Both Alan and Mark served as consultants for the film. In making their documentary, they interviewed over 40 people, including news reporters, police officers, lawyers, jury members, family, and friends. We'll talk quite a bit about those interviews, how they secured them, how they gained and sustained people's trust, ethical decisions that happened throughout the filmmaking process, including one particular decision that would involve the writer for the Hollywood adaptation. In fact, why don't we consider this episode as an ethics lab, not a checklist? We're looking at how trust is built, strained, renegotiated, and sometimes broken in real documentary relationships. Alan and Mark, welcome to The Documentary Life. Happy to have you joining us today.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Excellent. Gentlemen, it's great to have you onto the program. Before we came onto the program, and this is for some of the listeners, I just discovered that Alan was a listener of the show during the making of this particular documentary. And so I'm honored to have this full circle moment. I think this is the first time we've had this on the show where I've discovered while we're having the show or while we're recording that somebody was, in fact, a listener of the program. So, Alan, tell me, maybe you could share a little anecdote about that.
Well, first, I really got to thank you because it was partially because of your podcast that I learned a lot of insights on how to handle interviews, the long process that it takes to make a documentary. Now, I truth be told, I can't remember back which was my favorite episode, but it was every time one of your episodes popped up, it was an instant download for me.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for this full circle moment. I appreciate that. Gentlemen, what I would like to do at this moment is play the teaser for your film so the audience has some context. So anyone who has not seen this film will have some context around our conversation. So let's go ahead and play that teaser now.
You've got 100 armed officers around here trying to get a shot at me. I dared them to shoot me. I didn't go down there to be a buffoon. I went down there for vengeance. And by God, I'll have vengeance.
He is a white male. He appears to be in his 40s.
If he pulls this gun and points at me, I'm going to shoot him.
I hope they don't think I'm bluffing. They think I'm bluffing?
My God, he's going to shoot him on television.
He's coming out! He's coming out! I charge, and they've admitted it.
He had a cable around a man's throat attached to the shotgun, so there's no way to get the shotgun away from the man's head.
In 1977, Tony Kuritzis kidnapped a mortgage broker and held him captive for 3 days. For the first time ever, the media was able to cover the event live. To some, Tony was a hero. To others, he was a crazed thug.
I knew what a shotgun sounded like. And I knew that was a shotgun.
Dead Man's Line, the true story of Tony Kuritzis.
Take us back to the very first moment of access on the project. How did the relationships actually begin, and what was being asked of the subject before any filming actually started? And for context, obviously, so much of this was found footage. The majority of filming were the interviews that you filmed. So again, that question, can each of you take us back to the very first moment of access on your project? How did the relationship begin, and what was being asked of the subject or subjects before filming was started?
Okay, so the very first person that we reached out to contact was Jack Parker. He was one of the people that actually did some of the filming that day, and he's in Indianapolis. You know, I found him fairly easily, and so we connected with him. And I think that you say what was the first thing that we asked them to say, or what was your question again on that? Because typically we built up the relationship before we got in front of the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So,
and that's what the question's around. Yep.
Okay, so the relationship really starts before you ever get in the studio. And a lot of times it happens months or weeks ahead of time because you have to build up a certain amount of rapport. Now, not everybody's that way. Some people they love getting in front of the camera. They love to tell the story. So they're a lot easier to sell. But probably some of the best guests that we had were the ones where we did have to build that relationship a little bit. The easy one was Jack Parker. But the key to Jack is that he gave us credibility when we reached out to the next person.
Sure he did, because you could leverage his name through each interaction. And Mark, how about yourself? Can you add to that?
How did we contact Jack? Did we send him an email, and that's how he responded?
Yeah, he was still working at that time, and I tracked him down through his. You know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the connection to him was because we had done a previous documentary on Mayor Ballard, the mayor of Indianapolis. Yeah. And at the end of that, we were thinking, okay, which project are we going to do next? And we created this list, and Mark had on it the Kuritzis case. Now, Jack worked at the same news station at that time as Debbie Knox. Debbie Knox had done a story on our Mayor Ballard documentary. So I believe I reached out to Debbie Knox first and said, hey, can you connect me with Jack? She did. And then we went from there.
And
I would think sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Debbie Knox is a local anchor.
Okay.
Pretty well known on local TV.
Right. I would think that I would think also that by nature, the content of your first film would give you some access and some credibility as well. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, Mayor Ballard at the time, it's a big name in Indianapolis. So there was a little bit of street cred there, as they say. But I think the bigger thing was Debbie Knox saying, hey, Jack, no, I should take that back. I think the biggest thing at play here is Jack Parker is just a super great guy, right? He's a super nice guy. and he's one of these people that is always happy to talk about that case. And then on top of it, I think, longtime colleague of his, Debbie Knox, says, hey, these guys just did something with the mayor. He wants to reach out. Can I give him your email?
Mark, what were there signals that told you that access started to become a bit more real? So it wasn't just simply granted, but when did you, I guess, were there any moments where you started to feel that you had, let's call it, some earned access?
Yeah. And I'd just like to add about Jack. He we asked him for can we use your film? And he immediately just said yes. And we were like, why? And he said, well, I just think this story needs to be told. Going forward, it was, scheduling the interviews was an ongoing thing because people kept just popping up. But like Alan said, if you've already talked with a couple of IPD, Indianapolis Police, or some state cops, they're going to pass around in their circles. Hey, these guys seem legitimate. Some of them we couldn't even film them right away. We would just have to go meet them and talk for a while. And they were especially the police.
Was that because of a hesitancy on their part? They wanted to know more about you guys, wanted to know more about your film project. Talk about that.
Absolutely. Who are we? We're nobodies, and we want to film them. So one of the things I found useful in convincing people was that we just had really studied everything that we could about the case. And so when we come in engaged like that, that was a sign of professionalism to these people, especially the police, because that's who I thought would be the hardest to get to interview, just because they're skeptical and they don't want to mess around with bullshit. So that part was interesting.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I think our listeners would value from hearing what that relationship is like, but I guess more so how you start a relationship with police officers in this context.
Alan,
I think Mark's right. I think the police officers were maybe a little bit of a closed gate at first, and then they slowly started opening. But I think probably the judge, and the Ruckelshaus family. The Ruckelshaus family. The brother was part of the Nixon administration, and our contact with the son of Ruckelshaus, he's a state senator. So I think they're probably always looking at this saying, well, what is this? So getting the other people ahead of these was important. Now, as far as the police go, I think, part of it is that this may sound silly, but Mark and I both grew up here. I've had my share of interaction with different police officers and sheriffs, and maybe there was a name or two thrown around just to saying, hey, we're serious about this. And on top of it, if you question us, here's a couple people you could talk to understand that we're legit and we have no hidden motive other than just talking about this film.
Makes sense.
And toward the end there, all of a sudden, anybody we would contact would be willing to talk with us, especially amongst the police again, because, we have this sort of list of people who were going to say, hey, this looks serious, and this is probably the last opportunity for you guys to talk about whatever your experience was. And I mean, that's a big deal too. We came along at the right time when a lot of these people were still alive, and since we filmed them, many have passed. So,
and I guess Mark's right that most people were saying yes, but the two that we got no's from were Dick Hall and his ex-wife. His ex-wife was kind enough to send me a handwritten note explaining that we really need to speak to Richard, but when we tried to get Richard involved, he was pretty much no. My speculation, and this is all that it is that, he wanted to keep the content for himself and for his book, and rightfully so, because at the same time, he was publishing a book, and why would he want to give us the content that he was going to try to sell on Amazon? And again, that's no stick on him at all. But those were the two people that, in my recollection, the other person that wouldn't come on board was one of the other prosecutors. We got one of them, but the other main one we couldn't. I spoke with his son. His son was, he thought it was great, but his dad was just done with the story and didn't want to do anything else with it. So there were a couple that said no, but I don't think any of it had to do with us. It was more the topic matter, and they just didn't feel like either they were in the right position to talk about it, or they had just moved on from their lives and they didn't want to talk about it.
Before we get too much further in this conversation, because we have referenced a couple of people by name, can you tell us a little bit who, in the context of your film, because so many listeners won't have seen it quite yet, tell us who Dick is and tell us who Tom is.
Dick Hall is At the time, he was president of Meridian Mortgage. He worked there under his father, M.L. Hall. He pretty mild-mannered, soft-spoken, stoic is what he's described as most often. He had nothing to do with the loan that Tony Kuritzis, the guy who takes him hostage.
Tony, thank you. I said Tom. That was a mistake on my part.
So Dick Hall worked there. His father was the one who oversaw the loan being put together with Tony. And as it turns out, in 73, 74, Dick told his dad, he's like, I don't think we should do a loan with Tony. He just seems volatile. He just seems, this is going to be more trouble than it is. But his father's like, no. I know how to, this will be fine. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to February 8th, February 7th, God, the first day that the kidnapping happens.
I was going to say, let's just say what happens on that day in February.
Yeah, Tony comes into Meridian Mortgage. He's got things planned out.
Yeah.
And he's planning to take M.L. Hall hostage by wiring a shotgun to him. But he gets to Meridian Mortgage and discovers ML is on vacation in Florida. But his son, Dick Hall, is going to be in just a few minutes. And that's a real interesting moment where Tony could have backed out of what he was planning to do because he wasn't going to get his target. That is not what Tony did. Tony went forward. He just kept going forward. So he takes Dick Hall hostage up in his office. He wires the shotgun to him, and then he calls the police. Tony is a really interesting character. He's got a military background. He was the property manager at the trailer park that his family owned, and he wanted to become a real estate developer. And that's why he ends up going to Meridian Mortgage. Was he needed more money to develop the 17 acres of land he'd purchased on the west side of Indianapolis. And he could not sell it in those first few years, so he had to renegotiate his loan. He ends up with a $130,000 loan that is due full payment March 1st, 1977. So we're about three and a half weeks ahead of that date. And it's why Tony decided he felt he'd been wronged. He felt that M.L. Hall had steered away clients, potential people he could sell to, strip mall type developers, maybe like with an anchor store like Osco. And Tony felt that M.L. had steered these people away so that Tony would default on his loan. And in Tony's mind, it was like, well, then I'm going to get you, ML. I'm going to get you for this. You can't do this to me, and I'm going to make a big scene.
Yep. Let's go back to the relationships that we're talking about here and kind of dive a little bit further into living inside that relationship that you have with your subjects. Once filming is underway, what actions actually help to build trust? And then secondly, are there any actions, and you can use examples, obviously, I'm hoping you will, that can quietly erode that trust, even if, you guys didn't intend harm in any way? So again, we're talking about living inside the relationship. What actions actually build trust? What actions can quickly erode that trust?
So, we were talking about the police officers. The one thing I've learned about police officers, they can smell BS better than anyone, right? Yeah. So right off the top, when you're shooting them straight, and that's what we always did. We always just said what we're doing, and it was the truth. So I think right away, at least with the police officers, they knew that we were shooting them straight. So the thing that can erode the trust, I think, can be simple things like not being clear of your directions of where you want somebody or the timing of it. Being forgiving if they didn't reply in the first week, like just common human decency, treating people like how you'd want to be treated goes the furthest. And then on top of it, sticking to your word. And then I think some of the trust actually got earned after the interviews. And I know that's a little bit late. It doesn't seem to matter as much. So, and I'll give you a case in point. And what I mean by that is we had two particular people that we interviewed, high profile people that are in the doc. You can see them, that both had convictions, pretty big convictions of like criminal convictions. The thing we told them is we're not going to mention any of this stuff. And we didn't. So, so I think that's important when you're telling your guest, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. One, you stick to it, never waver. If you have to waver, bring it up to them, make sure they're okay with it, and press forward. And then probably the bigger thing is just common decency to people.
Yeah, show up when you say you're going to, ask the questions you say you're going to ask. And it is interesting. After an interview, sometimes they'd bring their wives or a family member with them. And basically you just talk to them the way any good host would. Like if they've come to your house, offer them water. Side chat is really good. Figure out what are the things they know about and put them at ease. Because a lot of times they come in and they're kind of nervous. They don't know what you're going to do. And the way you talk to them right off the bat will start to put them at ease. And then at the end, this thing where they would feel better about it, maybe that doesn't contribute directly to the interview we had just done, but it always helped us going forward further, because now these people are also our advocates, and they will vouch for us.
Yeah.
Another standard rule of thumb, this is in any videography interview situation, is let your guests know that, hey, look, if you say anything that you don't like, just tell me. We're not going to use it, right? Like, we're not doing any gotcha. If you say something off the cuff that you don't like, and that happened several times, where they would say something, oh, let me, you know what? I don't know about that. Let me not say that. Let me say this instead. No worries. And the other thing that you got to let them know is this: we're not live. We're recording it, and it's my job. It's our job to make you look great. So just be good with that.
If you listen to the documentary Life and sometimes find yourself wishing you could actually join the conversation, well, now you can. I'm launching the Documentary Life Conversation, a free monthly live gathering for documentary filmmakers and nonfiction storytellers from around the world. We'll talk about ideas from recent podcast episodes, answer your questions, hear what you're working through, and have an open, honest conversation about making films and building a creative life. No presentations, no lectures, just documentary filmmakers getting together to talk, listen, and learn from one another. Our first conversation is August 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be live on Zoom as well as the Documentary Life YouTube channel. To start attending, just head to thedocumentarylife.com/podcast and sign up. I look forward to seeing you there. How, if so, did the release of the film change any of the relationships you had with the people you interviewed? So tell me what the reception was like with the people that you interviewed, and if in fact any of the relationships were changed, or if they were just furthered, if they were strengthened.
I would say that almost everyone that we actually sat down and interviewed, were fairly happy with the film, that they liked it. It went from, yeah, it's good, to, oh, you guys nailed it. But I do remember I was in conversations with one of Tony Kuritz's niece, and just great back and forth emails, et cetera. Never got to the point of doing an interview with her because she was probably our age at the time and just didn't have much relevant information. But I still wanted them to know that this was not I was not trying to go after, we were not trying to go after Tony or anything like that. We were just trying to tell the story wherever it went. But then once she saw the film, she let me know that she was disappointed with me and disappointed with the film. And, but I was okay with it because I stand by the film. I think it's very accurate in what happened, and it's very accurate with the information that we discovered and et cetera. So her being disappointed with it, would I have liked her to like the film? Sure. But, you're not going to please everyone.
Mark, do you have anything to add to that? Because I think that's a great point. That happens with our films. Sometimes our subjects are less than thrilled, perhaps how they felt like they were portrayed in the film.
Yeah. I mean, the Kuritz's part of it is what it is.
Of course.
I always was like, what exactly did they, what's their suggestion for how to cover this, if not factually? And if you cover it factually, yeah, it shows some negative things about Tony. But in a lot of cases, you almost become, you're kind of doing that for the family. In the case of John Ruckelshaus, I mean, he was ill when we interviewed him, and afterward, after the film had come out, his family was just very happy with the way that he was portrayed. And they were like, this is a huge bit of history, and I'm glad you guys handled this right. Carl Heckman, Fred Heckman's son, same thing, where it's just like, well, at least I really like the way that you're portraying my father or my husband or whatever. That's really great. That's one for the ages or for the history books.
Can you talk a little bit about the journey of how Dead Man's Line, your documentary, became a Hollywood adaptation, which has just recently been released, a Gus Van Sant film, Dead Man's Wire? Let's talk a little bit about that journey.
Sure. So we had, and another thing I don't know if you want to touch on, we don't have to, is, but with your having filmmakers, is distribution, because that's part of our story too. But with Dead Man's Wire, it was, we put out the film, and we got we owned TonyKaritzis.com, and this guy reached out, Austin. I always missay his name, Mark.
Kolodny.
Austin Kolodny reached out and was like, hey, do you want to sell TonyKaritzis.com? I'm like, well, you know, what are you interested in this for?
Yeah, so, why is that?
Right. So we ended up building a friendship with this guy, and he was just this young guy out in California that was he was also a screenwriter, and he just found the story fascinating. He had originally heard it on a podcast. What was the podcast, Mark?
I don't remember.
No, you know the podcast. You told me about it too. The funny one.
The Dollop.
Yeah. So Austin had heard the podcast by the Dollop about Tony, and that kind of got him interested in it. And I think there was like 1 or 2 videos online. Ours was still behind a paywall. And so we started talking, built up a good friendship. The guy was just, you know, super down to earth, and was interested in the story. Now, around the same time, we had been reached out to by a Hollywood director producer team. And I'm not going to say their names because I'm going to trash them, but their names are attached to some huge films. Everybody would know the films, but they wanted to option our project. And we're like, yes, I always thought that this would make a good Hollywood film. And so it was only a few months into that relationship where we realized, wait, are these guys ghosting us? And they just started to get flaky about everything. And about 6 months into it, we were like, I don't think these guys are doing anything. So, but meanwhile, Austin and us, we would still have conversations with them. And it was, you know, it's like Austin's like, well, I want to write a screenplay for this. And we're like, okay. Yeah. So Austin was ready to, or Austin suggested, or we all came to the conclusion of, well, why don't we do it together? We'll give you, Austin, our archives. You be the screenwriter. We'll package it up and we'll see if we can't sell it. Austin, sure thing. So no money involved. Nobody's getting paid anything, right? It's just pure wanting to do something. Austin starts writing the script. Now, it takes probably about a year or so, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting the script done, etc." Well, at the same time, this Hollywood director producer team comes back into our world.
The same team, the original team.
The same team, and they came back to us, and we were like, "Come on, guys, you really." Threw us under, and we didn't do anything. Why should this be any different? Now, I still don't understand to this day why Mark and I bought the lines they sold, but they sold us more lines. And it was like, okay, I know. Probably the biggest reason is because they are throwing out big Hollywood names to be part of the projects, from Paul Giamatti to Sam Rockwell. Jeremy Strong. And so, to me, and if you look at their resumes, like, okay, I can believe this. And supposedly they had played our documentary for these people. They loved the film. They want to be involved. Now, I have no idea if these people actually saw the film, etc., but they got us again. We're like, all right, let's do it. But you know what? We're working with the screenwriter, Austin, and we've already agreed to do something with him. So we can't just leave Austin hanging. Why don't we use his script? You direct it and you produce it. The director said, okay, let me read the script. So we give him the script. He comes back and basically says, what is this pile of whatever? I would rather write it on my own. And then so it's a challenge for us because we
now you have some decisions to make. The loyalties come out.
The loyalty, and with Mark and I both, loyalty is a big, strong thing. So we knew that we're not going to leave Austin hanging unless we come up with a compromise. Yeah. And so around the same time, I believe via Austin's manager, they had brought in their own producers to possibly take this script and write it. And they wanted us to have a meeting with them. And we did. But the challenge is that when we looked at their IMDb resume, it wasn't as impressive. So Mark and I were like, you know what? We probably really want to go with this Hollywood team, but we don't want to leave Austin out hanging dry. What do? We came up with the decision with Austin on a call, what if we just say, Austin, you can do whatever you want with your script. We have no legal ties to it anymore. You can sell it for whatever, and we don't get anything. Whereas before, we would have still been attached to it. It would have been a film, Dead Man's Wire, based on the true story of Dead Man's Line or something like that. Like we would have been executive producers. We would have been paid a fee, all that good stuff. But in this scenario, we let Austin free. And we can go pursue this Hollywood director team and have them make it. And it's basically whoever makes it first, more power to you.
Wow.
Austin was great with it. So me and Mark were great with it. Now, Mark and I learned fairly quickly that this producer director team was still full of it. And they start flaking up. Within a few months, we knew we're getting ghosted again. Yeah. And Mark and I were just like, man, we picked the wrong horse with this one for sure. But let's hope for Austin's sake that something happens. And then we start hearing, holy cow, Werner Herzog is now tied to Austin's script as director. Now, I would think most of your listeners would know who Werner Herzog is. That's a huge deal. And then Nicolas Cage is attached to play Tony, which again is like, oh my God. So we're telling Austin, truthfully, hey, brother, congratulations. We fumbled the ball here, but you're making it happen. Great for you.
Wow.
Now, and just a side bit, supposedly Dead Man's Wire, which is not a true term. It has nothing to do with, Dead Man's Line is the term that Tony used for his contraption. Werner Herzog came up with Dead Man's Wire.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I guess Gus Van Sant, when he came along, he wanted to keep it. So Werner Herzog dropped out at some point. Nicolas Cage dropped out at some point, and then Gus Van Sant came into the scene, and so did all the actors, etc. So now we are sitting in April of this year, and Austin lets us know that they've snagged Al Pacino. So Mark and I are both like, holy man, we really blew it on this one. So we kind of did some groveling, and we said, man, is there any way that we could still get at least a credit with your film? Because I don't want to take away Austin's, he wrote the script. I don't want to say like we didn't have anything to do with the script, but we would talk about things like, oh yeah, that kind of works or whatever. But it was definitely Austin's script. And so we're like, could we get any type of credit at all? And luckily for us, he got a hold of his producer for the film, and they gave us historical consultants. And at that same time, I turned over our archive to their team, and they took it and they actually put it into the film. If you watch their film, that archival footage came from us.
Oh, wow.
And they also had and I still understand this because I hear two different things. They had to sign off on them using Dead Man's Wire. I've been told that they didn't have to do that. But I still feel like there had to be something there because it is very confusing. Dead Man's Line, Dead Man's Wire.
Right.
But we signed off on that as well because to me, at that point, we were getting nothing. And for them to give us a credit and to give us a quote from Gus Van Sant, we had, a film we made has a very positive comment from, one of the greats. So that's kind of, I'm a little long-winded, but
Gentlemen, as we wrap this conversation up here, tell me something I forgot that you'd love our listeners to know about. And Alan, as somebody who was an admitted fan of the show, what's something that our listeners need to know about the documentary, either the process of making a documentary film or sort of the lifestyle that's associated with it? And also, gentlemen, please include how we can see your film.
So I would say the thing that I would say to your listeners is, don't expect to get paid for it. Do it for the passion of it, because unless you have a budgeted documentary, the odds of you making money from it are slim to none. And I take that from, we did the film circuit, the film festival circuit. We did the VOD circuit.
Yep.
And we have highly credit. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging here, but
you should.
We have
it's a great film. You should.
Critics. I haven't seen a bad write-up for our film from any film critic. So I know that we have a credible film. Yeah. So all that in combined does not mean that your film is going to be profitable, because cutting through the noise to get it to people is just a Herculean effort. So my suggestion to anybody that wants to make a documentary, absolutely do it if that's your passion, but don't expect to make any large sums of money from it.
Thanks, Alan. How about you, Mark?
There's something when we were talking about how you earn trust with the people that we interview. There's a story that I forgot to tell. The only person from the Kuritz's family that we were able to interview was Tony's older brother, Jimmy. Yeah. This was probably the hardest interview to get set up. I think we spoke with his wife and him several times before we went over. So me and Alan get there, we show up, his wife comes out and she's super nice, wants to know if there's anything she can get us. And then Jimmy comes out, and Jimmy's an older guy at this time, and he's like, hey guys, we don't get to be talking about anything yet. He's just like, hey guys, come over here. And he takes us across his driveway and through a chain link fence gate. We're in his yard now, and you can see there is a dog run, like a big chain link dog run in the middle of his yard. And he's like, come over here, I want to show you something. And we're like, shouldn't we go inside and start doing the interview? He takes us to the front of that dog run, doesn't say anything to us, and just opens the gate. He has two dogs in there. I think they were like retrievers. They were hunting dogs. They were bird dogs. Yeah. And they come barreling out at us. And luckily for me and Alan, we're pretty familiar with dogs. We like them a great deal. I remember I turned around and just kneeled down. I was like, how you doing, buddy? And in the back of my head going, he just tested us.
He did.
This was a little trust fall, wasn't it? Of
course he did.
Because in his head, he's probably like, if these guys can't handle these dogs, then I'm not talking with them. And then we went inside and did this interview with him. And that was really amazing, that whole thing. Because Jimmy had he had his own point of view, which you don't really get from anybody else in that film. So still super grateful to Jimmy for doing that. And that was a wonderful, hilarious,
a nice moment.
Loose the hounds upon them. It was
right.
But he definitely had his guard up before that. Like, it wasn't. We built that trust in with him partially because of that. Yeah. But it also circling back to, this guy, he ran for sheriff. Was he actually a sheriff at some point too? Maybe.
I don't think he was actually sheriff, but ran
but definitely
Brown
friendly
County.
with police officers and a good BS detector. And so if you're being honest about what you're saying, I think you're going to go over well. But if you're trying to BS somebody, especially an old school guy, they're going to see through it, and their guard is going to be up. But by the time we got with Jimmy, I'm not saying this is a negative or a positive, but the man cried on camera, right? So I feel like we did get his trust, and I remember him enjoying the film. I don't remember anything negative from him or his wife about the film, that they appreciated. Now I do feel like I need to segue what you said earlier, is that people can watch. So one of the things that Mark and I decided with this new film coming out, it's been sitting on Amazon VOD for the past few years, and it brings in $20, $30 a month, nothing really. So we're like, you know what? what we've always wanted is just for people to see it. So let's put it on YouTube. So right now, anybody can watch the film. It's free. And as far as I know, it's going to be free from now until the end of time.
Mm. That's fantastic. It's a wonderful film. Dead Man's Line. I know that my listeners are probably going to go watch this pretty soon after hearing this episode. Alan and Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on The Documentary Life. And good luck in the future for your own documentary lives. This was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And I can tell you, I'm looking forward to your new episodes.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening. You can find the show notes for this episode, along with links and resources we discussed, at thedocumentarylife.com. You'll also find our free download, The Documentary Life Field Guide, there, as well as a place to sign up for our new monthly meetups, The Documentary Life Conversation. And if you're looking for a supportive community of fellow documentary filmmakers to help you stay accountable, gain creative feedback, and keep your project moving forward, you might consider the Documentary Life Mastermind. Learn more and apply at thedocumentarylife.com/mastermind. And if today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to continue it over on YouTube. Just search for The Documentary Life, where you'll find episode clips, conversations, and more. And if you enjoy what we're building there, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, remember, stories matter, listening matters, human connection matters.